like, if Alexander the Great was a person living in today's world, will we still consider this person to be great? And just sort of examining the deeds and conquests from a modern point of view and getting them to think about that. This, of course, is a discussion that's happening with, young students.
안녕하세요. 대치동캐슬입니다. 오늘은요, 옆에 특별한 손님을 모셨는데요. 그 대치동에서 이게 소위 뭐 빅3 혹은 빅7 이렇게 해서 굉장히 유명한 영어 학원들을 언급을 하거든요. 그 언급을 할 때 이제 보여지는 곳 중에 하나가 트윙클이라는 어학원입니다. 그래서 어렵게 트윙클의 대표이신 브라이언님을 모셨습니다. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요.
간단히 자기소개를 부탁드릴게요.
Hi, I'm Brian Park, CEO of Twinkle. I'm here representing Twinkle, which is an English academy that started in Daechidong. I started with my brother Andrew, who's not here today. And I'm here to talk with 대치캐슬. Thank you for having us.
이게 학원 이름이 트윙클인 이유가 쌍둥이 형님과 함께 운영을 하셔서 트윙클이라고 합니다. 그리고 굉장히 어려 보이시지만 저랑 동갑이라고도 합니다. 이제 본격적으로 질문을 하면 대치동에서 굉장히 잘하고 있는 곳 중에 한 분인데 초등학생들이 영어를 배우면서 느끼는 가장 큰 어려움이 무엇일까요?
I think that the biggest obstacle for young students learning English is it has to be fun. That's the most important thing. They have to learn how to they have to learn English in a fun way, and I think that's the thing that Twinkle has made part of its philosophy and part of the way that we do things that we've been successful at is teaching in a very dynamic way, in a very fun way, while still maintaining a very high level that challenges them. And I think that, one of the big obstacles for other places is they're trying to figure out how to make it fun without, breaking the mold of what they're used to. So we broke the mold, which was a system that was more based on studying, memorization, taking tests. These are the things that are typical with school, but in learning a language, especially outside of the native speaking environment, it has to be fun because it requires that the children are not learning passively, but they're learning very actively. It requires really high engagement. But in the 학원 system, they only have a certain amount of time for learning, and so you have to make it optimal for them to want to learn and participate as much as possible in that short span of 2 to 3 hours a day, however many times a week that they attend. But in order for something to be fun at the same time, you can't force them to do something because then it's not fun. So you have to make it so that they voluntarily want to engage and participate as much as possible.
그런 관점에서 보면 현재 실은 한국에서는 영어 유치원이라든지 이런 영어로 배우는 경험들이 꽤 많아요. 심지어 초등학교 전에도 많거든요. 그와 비교해서도 현재 하고 있는 이 트윙클의 시스템이나 대치동의 학원 시스템이 다른 게 그곳에서는 이제 아무래도 러닝 중심이 될 수도 있는 걸 굉장히 펀 중심으로 포커스를 했기 때문에 차별화가 있다 이렇게 이해해도 되는 거.
Yeah, it is fun, but it's not only fun; it's actually really challenging.
그렇죠.
And Twinkle is known for focusing on creativity and critical thinking, and having a very high level of literacy, and the level of books that we use are high level. I think that the thing that many people have a misconception of is that if something is fun, it must be easy or it must be low level. But I think that students and children especially, they like challenges. So they like being challenged, they like solving puzzles, they like doing things that stretch their boundaries because then it doesn't feel like work, it feels like fun. And as long as you keep that aspect in the assignments, then they will perform at a very high level.
그러니까 펀한 거랑 쉬운 거랑 동의어가 아니라는 거죠. 그러니까 어려운 것도 펀할 수 있다라는 얘기인
네.
거잖아요.
네.
그럼 실제로 근데 이 두 개의 가치가 좀 상충돼 보여요. 레벨이 높으면 어려우면 싫어할 수 있잖아요. 근데 이거를 어떻게 믹스를 해서 가르치는데 학생들이 펀을 느끼면서도 높은 수준의 학습을 할 수 있게 되는 건가요?
At that point, it really becomes important to examine the system that you have in place. So, for let's say for a big classroom setting, this probably wouldn't work because it's really hard for a teacher to manage the development of like 30 or 40 children all at the same time. This is why this sort of philosophy in this program is optimal for smaller class sizes. We have class sizes that max out at 8 students. And that, I think, is probably the magic number for one teacher's ability to be able to manage the students not only as a group but individually as well. So if a student is, if one student is struggling or needs help, then they can still get that one-on-one attention and care. The teacher can help them, give them ideas, continue to keep them interested and engaged. While the other students, if they're already interested or engaged, they're either doing teamwork with their friends or they're just working at something on their own and they don't really need the help. So the way that we train our teachers is to be able to manage the class as a group but also individually. So a lot of the parents, for example, especially in Techidong, they have tutoring, one-on-one tutoring, which I think is really helpful. But there's a lot of time in tutoring, and I used to tutor myself like very long ago. There's a lot of time in tutoring where we call it downtime, where the teacher is not really doing anything because the student is just working. So if you maximize the efficiency, then you can just be teaching 8 students at the same time while giving them the same one-on-one quality of attention without really losing anything from the program or the quality. It's really just about training for maximum efficiency.
그러면 원장님이 생각하실 때는 그 적절한 인원수가 그 분위기를 만드는데 중요하다. 근데 그 매직 넘버가 8명 정도라고 생각을 하고, 그죠? 그게 개인이란 팀워크가 되는 건데, 그러면 오케이. 그러면 인원은 알겠고, 구체적으로 펀을 하기 위해서 그 시스템 안에서 어떤 장치들이 있나요? 학생들이 영어를 펀하게 배우려면 어떤 장치들을 활용하고 계신가요?
Oh yeah. So in our program we have 2 sets of curricula. One is nonfiction, one is fiction. So on one day they'll be attending nonfiction, which is like science, history, debate, presentation. On the other day they'll be attending fiction, which is literature, novels, writing, and the humanities. Within those 2 sets of curricula, we have our high-level reading, but the discussions go pretty deep. We don't focus on just like if it's a nonfiction, we don't just focus on dates and names and things that you would memorize for a history test. We would talk about, for example, if we're talking about Alexander the Great, we would talk about first of all, why is he great? What did he do? And then we might talk about, well, what does it mean to be great? What is greatness? How does a conqueror or a leader qualify to be great? And we usually try to get the students to reflect also on like why should this matter to them. So there might also be a question at the end, like if Alexander the Great was a person living in today's world, will we still consider this person to be great? And just sort of examining the deeds and conquests from a modern point of view and getting them to think about that. This, of course, is a discussion that's happening with young students, so we would be doing it in a really fun way. The teacher might be like acting like the conqueror or doing something like that, drawing funny pictures on the board. But the lesson is still there, and the lesson is still to get them to open their minds to not just memorize things, but to really understand them more deeply. If we're talking about literature, like for example Harry Potter, which is a very famous novel, everyone knows and says they've read Harry Potter and they say they understand Harry Potter. But in our literature classes, we would teach it almost to the level of a college English literature course. That's the way we've designed our program to be. To not just be a program where we're talking about like, oh, who's the character and what did they do, and you know, these kind of basic comprehension questions, but we would talk about the author herself. Where did she get the inspiration for Harry Potter? Like, for example, in the first book, there's a lot of discussion about alchemy, and she even mentions a famous alchemist in the book. So we might talk about, well, what is alchemy, and where did alchemy come from, and how does it relate to our world? You know, alchemy was the ancient version of what we would just call today's chemistry. And so how did those things translate, and you know, how can we see chemistry and science as sort of being magic as well, and sort of kind of having those discussions.
아, 그러니까 이게 재미라는 게 그냥 무슨 액티비티를 해서 공놀이라는 이 재미가 아니라 그 컨텍스트가 주고 있는 그 의미와 배경, 교훈을 알아가는, 그러니까 학습의 즐거움의 재미에 포커스를 맞추시는군요.
Yeah, I really believe students love learning. You know, or definitely our students, they love learning, and so when they leave, they had a great time, but they also learned a lot.